All right, so remember we left off where the Nervi are denied by Cicero his request or their request to help him leave. I think that they had ambush in mind as well, based on our past experiences with the Gauls and their promises. So they are actually going to just besiege the whole city, which I think confirms the idea that they were probably going to betray the Romans again. So we can pretty much confirm because if since Cicero said no, they are going to attack the Romans with everything they have. That probably means that it was a trap to begin with. So good job, Cicero. So this is actually a description of the siege, them preparing the siege of Cicero's camp. And in the passage 40, we kind of explained what Cicero's camp looks like. Now we're going to kind of explain some of the siege weapons used by the Nervi, and note that they actually use a lot of Roman siege weapons because they learned how to make them from some captives that they had. So it'll be kind of cool. We can talk about when we get to the siege weapons, what they look like and what their function would be. So with that in mind, let us read this passage.
Apox spe repulsi, nervi valo pedum novem, et fossa pedum quindecem hiberna cingunt. Haec et superiorum honorum consuetudine ab nobis connoverant. Et quos clam de exercitu habebat captivos, ab eis docebantur. All right, so first, when we look at this passage, we have a prepositional phrase with hoc agreeing with spe as an appellative, and then we see repulsi. Repulsi is a participle, and so we're kind of saying this whole chunk that begins this passage is a participle, probably agreeing with Nervi since they're both nominative, plural, and masculine, and so is Nervi. Valo is in the ablative. Pedum, that means step, which kind of means just feet in general, actually. So we can kind of get the idea that they're measuring in the distance of a foot, so it's about 12 inches, maybe 11. And fossa is, of course, another ablative if we're connecting two ablatives with the et. Valo and fossa are connected. Pedum, again, is foot. And we have quindecem, which means 15. Hiberna is, of course, our accusative plural, and cingunt. That's just our verb. Not much to that one. Then we see hike. Hike can be nominative or accusative plural. Neuter. Kind of. We have an et. It's kind of hanging out here, so it's not really connecting anything right now. We'll see what it's doing as we go, actually, because there's another et here, so it's going to be kind of a both and idea. You wouldn't know that yet, but that's kind of what's going on here. That's why the et is just kind of hanging out there without anything to connect. And then superiorum honorum are both genitive plural. Consuetudine is ablative. Ab nobis is, of course, a preposition, and cognoverant is a verb. And like I said, this et here is now going with this et here as a both and then we see quos. Quos starts a clause. Interesting antecedent choices here because there are some, but they're kind of odd and far away. They're on the other side of the et. So actually, we're going to end up doing something else with that. But first, we'll keep going. Clum is actually an adverb. De exercitu is a preposition. Habebat captivos then kind of completes our clause there. Note that captivos and quos are the same case and number and gender. So what we probably have here is a noun and apposition, as habebat is our verb. Abeis is a preposition. Now we can probably say that quos, its antecedent, is actually eis. This is called a post-positioned antecedent. Okay, and all it is the same as an antecedent. It just comes afterwards instead of before. It's not that bad. Still agrees in number and gender, not in case. But it's the same rules as an antecedent, it just comes afterwards. Dokebantur, of course, is our verb in the passive imperfect. Okay, so if we're translating, we say, the nervy, having been repelled from this hope. In other words, denied. Surround the winter camps with a rampart 9 feet high and a ditch 15 feet wide. They had known these things being siege tactic, both from the custom of previous years, from our guys, and they were taught by those whom they secretly had as captives from our army. So in other words, they learned these things from watching the Roman siege cities in the past, and they also have had captives kind of tell them about Roman siege weaponry. So the Gauls are actually trying to mimic how the Romans would take a city. It's actually a very effective way, so I think that's probably why they're using it. They kind of decided that was better than whatever way they were doing to take cities, which most likely involved fire or starving out. But these siege weapons, this engineering, is actually kind of a cool way to take a city according to the Gauls. But anyway, we should move on. Sed nulla fermentorum copia quae esset ad hoc usum Edonia. Gladiis caespites circum cedere manibus sagulisque terram ex haudere cogebantur. So here we start off with sed, that's just a conjunction. We see nulla, fermentorum in the genitive, and then copia. And now when we see copia, we say, oh, nulla agrees with copia. And the genitive does too. Oh, it doesn't agree, but it modifies it. So we have an adjective nulla modifying copia. We have a genitive modifying copia. We see quae. Our antecedent is, of course, copia. Asset. We're like, oh, that's our verb. That's cool. However, I think it keeps going, actually. It doesn't make much sense to just say which were. So we have to kind of keep it going. Hunc agrees with usum, and then odd ends at usum there too. So we have a little preposition, and Edonia kind of completes our linking pattern. So you have subject, verb, subject, complement. And then we have gladiis. Going to be dative or ablative. Because it's inanimate, I'm going to say it's probably ablative. Probably some kind of mean since it's a tool. Caespites is, of course, our direct object. Could also be nominative. Sorry, it's a little messy. So it could be nominative or accusative. I guess we'll see in a minute. Circum cedere is an infinitive. So we're probably going to have a main verb that takes infinitive. Manibus, sangulisque, those are both ablatives. Terram is, of course, a do. And ex haudere is another infinitive. And then we have cogebantur, our verb. Now, when you're deciding about stuff like this, the nominative or accusative, one something you can do is just look at the main verb and what it means. This here means they were forced. And I don't think that the sod, the turf, is being forced to do anything. I mean, it could be forced to be dug up or something like that, but here we have active infinitive. So the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim. We're going to go with accusative probably. So I'm going to scribble out that nominative. Also up here, nulla, I didn't say this is actually ablative. And we know that because the nominative would have to be plural, agreeing with cogebantur. So that's just not the case. Okay. So we have, as a translation, I suppose we can kind of say, well, but due to no supply of iron tools, note that the supply is going to be an ablative of cause. It's because of the no supply of iron tools, so ablative of cause. But due to the no supply of iron tools, which is appropriate for this use, they were forced to cut out the turf with the swords and to remove the earth with their hands and cloaks. Now, there's a couple things here. One, you can have this kind of funny image of using a sword to dig in the earth because they don't have any tools. So that's interesting. The Gauls, they seem a little ill-prepared to actually make these siege fortifications, or these siege equipments. But anyway, we then have an interesting use here when we have hands and cloaks, where you're probably using your hands a little more than your cloaks. I would imagine the cloaks get made into a bag, but because we kind of have the hands probably doing the actual removing of the earth, and then the cloaks are also just kind of thrown in here. This is actually an instance of zeugma. Which is where you kind of add something that's related but not as much relevant. So here we have they were forced to remove the earth with their hands. That all makes sense. But then with their cloaks is also kind of an odd thing to kind of combine with the hands here. So that's why zeugma kind of happens. And it gives you an image of them like using their cloaks for something else, with it carrying it away probably. But the removing the earth, the exhaudere, that's probably done with the hands. So you're implying an extra action by putting that ablative of with the cloaks. And that's kind of what the zeugma is doing. Anyway, let us move on. Quaquidem ex re hominum multitudo cognosci potuit. Nam minus horis tribus milium tres in circitu munitionem perficerunt reliquisque deibus, tures ad altitudinem vali, falces testudinesque, quas idem captivi ducerant, per parare et facere coiperunt. All right, so we have here qua, and when qua is the first thing in the sentence, we can probably say it's connecting relative. And note that it actually, if we keep reading, quidem is an adverb. Ex re, well, qua agrees with re, doesn't it? So it actually is going in that preposition with re. And then we can kind of say, well, it means like this thing or this event. Okay, so we'll get to that when we translate. But hominum is then a genitive modifying multitudo, which, if you know your vocab, that O ending is actually nominative. Cognosci is a passive infinitive. And then we have potuit, which takes a complementary that confirms cognosci's existence. All right, nam minus. Nam is simply an adverb, it just means for. Minus is less, and then we have here horis tribus, which is, of course, ablative. Okay, and when we have an ablative next to a comparative like minus, minus is, of course, an irregular comparison, but it means less, so you're comparing things if things are less. So this is a less than with our ablatives. So there's an ablative of comparison here. All right. Milium tres in circitu munitionem. Yeah, so with milium, I think we probably have to gap a possum because 1,000 what? 1,000 of steps. This is a common phrase in Caesar. He's leaving out the steps, I think, because he said it a few times, and you probably know what he means when he says milium tres. So it's kind of like 3 miles. or in this case 3,000 of steps. In Kirikutu in a circle, probably a circumference around the winter camp. Ammunitionem is of course a direct object, and then perfecerunt is our perfect verb. Reliquisque diebus, reliquis agrees with diebus, it's a time word, so here we have an ablative of time. Tures, probably another direct object. It could also be nominative, so we'll explore that if we have to. Ad altitudinem vali, the reason it went up through vali is because vali is a genitive going with altitudinem. Falces, testudinesque, these es endings are all either the direct object or the subject. And they're all siege equipment things. We're going to talk about them in a little bit down here. After we translate, I guess we'll talk about what they mean. But grammatically, let's keep going. Quas, of course, refers to all of these things over here, both the tures and the falces and the testudines. Idem is actually acting as an adverb here. Captivi is the subject. Garant is the verb. That means quas, of course, is the accusative direct object. Parare is an infinitive here. Ac is connecting another infinitive, with parare and facere, which is a pretty basic vocab to prepare and to make. And then coiperunt, to begin. So that's our main verb. And of course, prepare and make need direct objects. So I'm going to say that tures and falces and testudines, those are all direct objects, as I said before. All right, so the translation goes something like this. From this event, indeed, the multitude of men was able to be known. In other words, how many? So they're able to see how many people because they're trying to build things. For in less than 3 hours, they completed a fortification 3 miles in a circle. And in the remaining days, they began to prepare and to make towers in proportion to the height of the ramparts. The odd here is interesting because it does not mean like to the height of the ramparts, because these towers need to be taller than the ramparts. That's just how they have to work, so it has to be in proportion to. So towers in proportion to the height of the ramparts. Hooks, those are the falces. And the testudines, I translate those like they are look there, so the testudo. The testudines are the multiple testudos. And that literally means tortoise, and it has to do with a formation that they're going to actually build, kind of a little cart that's going to make a formation. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But anyway, which the captives had taught them, that's just gapped, in addition, they're the same way. So they taught them the siege weapons in the same way they taught them the previous building of siege weapons. But anyway, I want to talk about a couple of these things. So the tures, very cool idea where you build a giant tower taller than the walls of the thing you're trying to conquer. And you can see how there's a little building or a little entranceway. They're probably not all as fancy as this one down here at the bottom, but you see these guys, they can enter in through here, and what there are these stairs that kind of go like this all the way up until you're about right here. There's a little drawbridge, and it'll fall. You can see like the cords of it going right here. Okay, a drawbridge will fall on top of the walls, and the troops are able to then get onto the walls. The cool thing about this, if you don't put windows in, is that your guys can't actually be shot at. It's actually a protective thing. So the best way to take care of it is to light it on fire, because it's made of wood usually. So the Gauls are actually building this nice big tower so that they can kind of drop it onto the winter camp wall, and they can invade the winter camps. The falces are these hooks. They are simply these like kind of grappling hooks, and you hook them around the top of the wall, and you try to pull the wall down. You could probably do this with oxen or just with a lot of people. It's probably not easy to do, but this is something that you can use to try to tear the walls down. It's not overly effective, but they are preparing them anyway. And of course, you have your testudines, and this is the one I want to talk about a little more. It's actually named after a formation of troops, which is then named after a turtle. And the formation is shown here. This is actually on Trajan's column, where you kind of stack your shields up, both above and to the side of your troops, and you kind of stack your troops all in there, and it makes kind of a shell for your troops. And it's kind of neat because, hang on, I'm sorry. It's kind of neat because it creates a barrier. So if you're getting shot at with arrows, if you kind of create this shell of shields around you, it's not likely that you're going to get hit by arrows. And then you can march as a group toward a wall. Now, if you make a giant ramp up the wall made of earth, you can then use this formation and just kind of march your troops up without too many casualties. What the Gauls are doing is they're actually probably building a structure that acts as the same kind of protective. It's probably on wheels, and you probably sit your guys underneath it, like this. And it's probably just made of wood, so it's a giant rolling testudo. It's kind of a shell for your troops to walk up to the walls. This is helpful if you get the gate open, but you're still being shot at, or if you're gonna walk up and try to ram the gate down or something. You're gonna want a testudo to protect yourself from arrows and spears and slings. But yeah, that's what they're building, these kind of structures that create the effect that the testudo would create. But it's a very Roman idea. These are all very Roman ideas of siege, so it's kind of neat to look at the Gauls trying to prepare them. Anyway, that's all I have for you, so enjoy and keep reading.